So, Ben Shapiro, it's, not that I don't love the average everyday sophist, but I do have to say that this particular one bothers me a lot. And by a lot, I mean, well, a hell of a lot. So apparently he thinks that Biden's press secretary saying that masking and social distancing will still be essential for most people, even after vaccination, is insane. Now, I would love to hear his framework, so let's go ahead and jump into that and see if it's, worth anything.
And by the way, speaking of the best science, nothing undercuts faith in the vaccine like what Jen Psaki said yesterday at the White House. So this has become a talking point, and it's the dumbest talking point I can imagine. It is so stupid. Really. Here is Jen Psaki, White House press secretary yesterday, saying the thing that is most calibrated for people to say, I'm not going to bother getting the vaccine. Here it is, right here.
So, by saying it's most calibrated, you're automatically assuming that that was the intention, but I'm not going to be the semantic person here.
Part of what we're also trying to do is make our health and medical experts available to ensure people understand, and I'll reiterate it here today, it's not just a vaccine, as obviously an incredible medical breakthrough, and we want every American to have one. But even after you're vaccinated, social distancing, wearing masks are going to be essential, and we'll need to continue communicating about that through health and medical experts.
So let me explain something to you. No. Okay, that's my explanation. No.
That's not a good explanation, but apparently your fan base would be perfectly fine with that? Okay, so, Ben, let me explain something to you very, 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 very succinctly. The way that the COVID vaccine works is it takes 2 weeks after you're vaccinated with the first shot before it's even 50% effective in mitigating transference. And even then, we don't know everything about how well it's going to mitigate transference in the first place. Because this is a new vaccine. We are still learning things as we go. From what we can tell, it's 50% effective after the first 2 weeks, and then it doesn't even reach 95% effectiveness until several months, and until after you've had your second shot. If you just get the vaccine and then suddenly go out and you're perfectly fine doing everything, there's still a chance that you can transfer the virus to other people. I don't see how that is a difficult thing to understand, but apparently Ben doesn't understand it. But let's hear his take.
No, we're not going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. Once people are vaccinated, they're just not going to do that. And you know what? They shouldn't do that. Because at a certain level, yes, is there a baseline risk that a vanishingly few people could get infected after they get vaccinated? Sure.
Are you willing to provide anything for that? Any watch full episode here? Nothing? Nothing? What's your commenters say about that? 2 weeks to flatten the curve, government officials almost a year ago. Why she pushes the point is actually beyond me. Social distancing helps keep people separated and divided. Mask wearing equals treat human beings like farm animals and lepers. Of course, these are the takes of the Ben Shapiro stands. The most upvoted comments are things like this. Mask wearing means treating people like farm animals and lepers. And I don't even see how that is the case, but I've heard a lot of idiots try to explain it to me. Not that it's ever made sense. But, Ben, I do have to ask you, if you were presented with the scientific evidence of how the virus worked, would you simply say no because people won't do that? Because if your argument's going to be people will be stupid, that's not an argument. That's not an argument about how efficacious or not Biden's press secretary is in delivering her message. Your point is merely that people are stupid and they're going to be stupid. That can be used to undermine practically any argument. Any argument for science literacy, any argument for progressive social change, any argument at all can be taken on with the iron-fisted hammer of people are stupid so they will do stupid things. It does nothing for the conversation. And this guy's supposed to be the cool kid's philosopher. Doesn't even know how to ground a fucking axiom.
But the baseline level of risk is at that point so unbelievably low that there is no rationale for continuing to keep society shut. None. There's no rationale for socially distancing. There's no rationale for mask wearing.
Actually, there is rationale. So here's the thing. The COVID vaccine protects you. And we only are figuring the amount that it will work on transference. That's not a hard set in stone number. Those are not hard set in stone things. We may find out tomorrow that actually the numbers we have on what it does to mitigate transference are completely and totally bunk. We might find that there's a new strain of COVID that the vaccine does not work against. And so that strain starts rampaging through the areas. There's a bunch of different factors here at play, Ben. And you seem to be ignoring all of them. If everyone were to get vaccinated, be locked down, get paid enough money to survive throughout the course of the lockdown, and some system were in place to deliver groceries and everything to people without them having to go out and do it on their own, guess what? We could have this virus eliminated very, very quickly. The vaccines would prevent people from getting them within the small groups that they actually do congregate in. The lockdowns would prevent the virus from being able to transfer from person to person, which is, by the way, how the virus has a chance to mutate. The more times it transfers, the more times it has a chance to mutate. And by providing a safety net for people in this situation, people could go back to work when they're done and not be completely and totally screwed while they are locked down. We could eradicate this virus very, very quickly. But our government seems to be working with a three-legged stool and a fucking handsaw, where either we want people locked down and we want them to be vaccinated, but we don't want to provide them the money to be locked down, or we want to provide them the money and then not lock people down and then provide vaccines, or like what happened in the very beginning, where they wanted lockdowns, no money, and no vaccine. Not yet. The vaccine had not been made yet, so that couldn't even factor into the conversation. Our government, whether it's held by a Democrat or by a Republican, seems to be very, very inept at handling this particular issue. Now, arguably, Trump did infinitely worse than Biden would have done in this particular scenario. But that doesn't mean that it's not still agitating that people don't have checks, that we don't have effective lockdowns, and that the vaccine is not being pushed out into more areas at a faster rate. Now, how much power Biden actually has over any of those things is hard to say. I mean, where funding is concerned, he can't do that via executive order. He has to go through the Senate. He has to go through the House of Representatives in order to get anything like that done. So it's not all on Biden there. But the fact of the matter still stands, Ben, that people need to protect themselves. And encouraging people to go get themselves killed, infect other people, is a bad take. And it seems to be exactly what your idiot fan base wants to hear.
That is not a thing. If you want to say that everybody for the future should always, under all circumstances, socially distance and mask with people who are over 80 in nursing homes, there is a better case for that than what you were saying post-vaccination.
Well, good thing that nobody's saying that. And realistically, this is trying to play on the whole COVID only affects the old, COVID only affects the infirm. That's that talking point he's trying to work with, which, again, ignores more science. It ignores the scientific fact that COVID is not a mass extinction event, should we not get it under control. It is a mass debilitating event. It does things negatively to people's lungs, to their bodies, long term. That's the stuff that's there. You can't just say, I'm 20, if I catch it, I'll be fine. No, we have plenty of people who are 20 who are catching it, who are getting long-term lung damage as a result of it. But, you know, continue to tell your audience to go get themselves killed, Ben. To go get themselves debilitated. Go ahead. It's fine. It's fine.
Israel just came out with a study. Okay, it is released by the Maccabee Healthcare Services. And here's what they found. As of Thursday, there have been over 416,000 people who have gotten the second Pfizer shot in Israel. Here is the grand total number of people who have gotten COVID. 254. Out of 417,000 people, 254 people got COVID after getting that second shot, and 0 of them had heavy conditions. 0.
Okay, but you're conflating things. Ben, after that second shot, and a decent time after that second shot, is when the transference rate is actually dropped down significantly. Before that, during that first shot, during the first stage of the vaccine, which most people are like, oh, I got my shot, I'm fine, that is when they cannot social or they have to still social distance. They have to still wear masks. They have to still do other things. You're ignoring that. That just doesn't factor into your mind, apparently.
Over the same period of time, out of 778,000 people in the control group, almost 13,000 new cases of COVID-19 emerged. That shows that the vaccine is 91% effective 7 days or more after the second injection is administered.
So, here's another point that probably needs to be handled. Another point that needs to be considered, Ben. I understand that your point is going to hinge on 9%. That's a really small number, really small. Okay, now, can I ask you, Ben, what's 9% of the United States population? Go ahead, take a minute. It's okay. You can do the math. It's okay. But you're going to come up with 9% of over 300 million people. You're going to end up with over 30 million people in your calculations. That is an insane amount of people. Now, if we have a 9% infection rate throughout the entire country, that is going to get a lot of people screwed. But even if we have that smaller number, even if we use the smaller number, we still have a decently high infection rate. We end up with hundreds of thousands of people infected in the United States, which, oh, by the way, is the reality we're in right now anyways. Almost as if things are still not perfectly safe yet.
The whole point of people taking the vaccine, particularly if you are not at high risk of death from this thing, if you're under the age of 65 and in decent health, the only reason, really, that you are taking this is to prevent yourself from infecting people who are old.
No, Ben! Okay, look, even if somebody wants to hit me for not making a great point with the numbers and the infection rates and what have you, I don't care. This point right here is where he starts ignoring a lot more science easily. Because, Ben, I got a question for you. What about the long-term effects of COVID that affect people of all ages that we've been seeing? And, oh, by the way, it's not just people who are old who have died from COVID. There are people who are younger who have died from COVID as well, Ben. You're not just trying to prevent old people from getting sick. There's more to it than that. There are long-term negative repercussions in several COVID cases. But to make your point, you have to ignore that.
Or, more importantly, so you can get back to regular life. We all know this. So, if you want to convince a bunch of healthy 40-year-olds not to take the vaccine, the best way to do that is to tell them that even if they take the vaccine, they have to continue doing this crap ad infinitum.
Nobody said... Wait, what? Who? Who said they had to continue doing it ad infinitum? Who? No, nobody has made that point, Ben. You constructed that straw man. You're hitting a straw man. Nobody said they'd have to continue doing this forever. That was not a word used. That never factored into the conversation. You shoved that in.
It's not going to happen. Why she's pushing this point is absolutely beyond me.
It's because we don't fully understand the effects of the virus. We don't fully understand the effects of the vaccine. We are still learning these things as we go. We are being trepidatious. We are being cautious. This is a thing that people do to survive. Ben! This is what people do to live! Jesus!
It's ridiculous. It is counterproductive. It is stupid. It is not scientifically backed.
Yes, it is. It is scientifically backed, Ben.
At a certain point, the risk level of COVID is low enough that we have to go back to our regular lives. COVID is not going to disappear. COVID is not going to be like the bubonic plague where it just doesn't exist really anymore.
Wait, how do you know that, Ben? So I got a question. Truly and honestly, if we vaccinate, and we can vaccinate early enough to where we only have, the 8 strains we have right now, and we can effectively eliminate all 8 strains of COVID, and we can eliminate it from society, the same way we did with things like polio, what's it going to be like in 10 years when Ben's wrong? Like, I'm just curious. In 10 years, if we do actually manage to eliminate COVID, if that's gone, what is Ben going to say, I was wrong about that? Or is he just going to continue going on his life as if he never made this dumb point?
That's not going to be a thing. It will remain a baseline level of risk. And if that baseline level of risk is reduced by 90%, at that point, go to work. At that point, go to a concert, go to a baseball game. I will. After I get vaccinated, I plan on engaging in my regular life. And you know what? My parents, who are verging on 65, they plan on doing the exact same thing. Because at that point, you know what? Life is filled with risks. The White House encouraging people to continue masking and socially distancing after they have the vaccine is nuts. It is nuts.
No, it's not, Ben. It's based on the science we currently know and understand. And when that changes, when we learn more about this and when the science says something different, because that is what science does, it evolves, it changes, it improves, it gets better. When that happens, a new statement will likely be brought out. If anything, though, Ben, with takes like this, if we never get rid of COVID, it will be your fault. You will have been one of the people who convinced... How many subscribers do you have? How many subs do you have, dude? Take a look here. 2.7 million people. 2.7 million. You will have been responsible for telling at least 2.7 million people that there's no risk, that there's nothing wrong with this, that at least there's minimal risk, and that they can go back to doing their own shit, and then the infection continues. You get to be one of the people who is responsible for the pandemic getting worse. But will you ever make that position? Will you ever say that? I doubt it.
And it is going to convince millions of people not to get the vaccine. Because if they're saying, okay, well, I don't even know what the risks of the vaccine are 2 years from now. We don't have a longitudinal study or anything. So either I could go back to my regular life and not get the vaccine, or I could go back to my regular life and get the vaccine, or alternatively, and get the vaccine and not go back to my regular life, or not get the vaccine and not go back to my regular life. What if I'm just going to skip the risk? Unless I have an underlying risk.
Did you just Pascal's wager the vaccine?
These geniuses with their science. Wow, amazing.
Oh my god, this fucking face. Ben, did you seriously just try to Pascal's wager the vaccine? Oh my god. Okay, so I don't know how many ways I have to describe that if we are still learning about something, the science is going to change day to day as we get better understanding of how things work. Because the scientific method says that we have our hypothesis, we test it, and if it starts to fail in those tests, then we have to rework our hypothesis. But you still have to give something to the public. You still have to give them some guidelines to work with. Something that might be effective. Ben and people like him have been making points about the science changing and the science, the quote-unquote brilliant scientists and their stupid deductions. When the way that science works is we will get different information as it goes, as it gets refined, as it gets tuned to be better. That's just how this works. If today they are saying, no, you are still going to have to social distance for a time because we need to figure out what is actually going to happen with this if we have successfully knocked down the transference rate for all strains of COVID, not just the handful of local strains we have, then yes, the science on that will probably change when they realize that, oh, okay, or if they realize that, oh, okay, we can do this. But if not, Ben, then they're going to continue doing this thing that you really hate, which is telling people, please wear your mask, please social distance, please do things in a way that helps you. And I don't know if it's occurred to you, Ben, but people still, to this day, and likely because of idiots like you, do not understand what a mask does. Do not understand that the mask is there to stop transference, not stop personal infection. That doesn't factor into this video so much as anything else, but I do want to point out that that misunderstanding, and I see it all the time in my local area. Hell, there are people at some of the places that I frequent who wear a mask because their parents said they have to wear one for their own protection. And while I am for wearing a mask when you go outside, the fact that the parents are telling the kids that they need to wear it for their own protection, not for the protection of others, which is what the mask is supposed to do, is direct evidence that people like Steven Crowder, people like Ben Shapiro, people like No Bullshit, people like everyone here, Trump included, that influence these people have been giving them stupidly incorrect information for ages. But I'm just one idiot on the internet, and maybe some of the information that I've given is completely wrong too. Who knows? Who knows at this point? But with all that said, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please let me know in the description below. Not the description. Comment section. That's the one. That's the one. Comment section. I'm dumb. Anyway, please support the channel and what I do if you would like to. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, everyone, insert in the video tagline.